introduce themselves, and then when we go to question and answers, you can take up to 90 seconds to answer a question. If there's a need to follow up, or if you feel you would like to follow up after everybody else has had a chance to answer, we'll give you another half minute to answer that question. And then when we get to the end, we'll have a minute so that you can offer any closing remarks that you want to. So I think we'll start at the far end for our opening statements for 2 minutes each. And John Lyman, welcome. And we'd like to have you kick us off tonight.
Well, thank you for having us. These are, always interesting and good opportunities to, kind of get out and, meet folks and talk about what's going on. So my name is John Lyman. I'm a Columbia kid. I was elected to the Columbia Public School Board in April 2023. So this will be, kind of my first chance at being on the board and then running for re-election at the same time. We moved to Columbia in 1986 when my dad got a job at the university. This is the only place that I would really ever, call home. Went to Grant Elementary School, then we moved, and I went to Russell, then I went to West Junior High School. I always like to make sure it's West Junior. And then I graduated from Rockbridge High School in 98. The University of Missouri was the only school that I ever considered going to. Graduated with a degree in geography with a minor in history. In the last 20 years, I've been at the Veterans United Home Loans. I'm currently a senior loan officer there. My wife, Molly, has been teaching elementary school in Columbia Public Schools for 20 years. She's also been an athletic coach for Hickman for the last 20 years. She's the stunt coach this year. I like to throw that out there. New all-girls sport. This is year 2 in the state of Missouri. It's cool. The season's coming up. Check a match out. They're interesting. They're interesting. They're kind of cool. So we've got 3 kids in the district, a middle schooler, a freshman, and then will be unbelievable to me until the end, a senior who's actually visiting a college right now. Really excited to be here to meet some folks, talk to everybody, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, John. Paul Harper, you're next. You have up to 2 minutes for an introduction.
All right, thank you. My name is Paul Harper. I am the father of 2 daughters, both of whom have now graduated from Rockbridge High School. Education has been a passion for me for a long time. I actually have a master's in special education and taught for several years before going on to law school. Since going to law school, I've worked for the state pretty much the entire time that I've been there, and I currently actually work for DESE, predominantly dealing with HR and dealing with the Office of Childhood. I'm currently the vice president of the Columbia Board of Education. Like John, I was also elected 3 years ago, and like John, I'm also running for re-election for the first time. Since I've been on the board, I've been the policy committee chair. The policy committee has been one of the most active committees we have. We have reviewed or amended over 200 policies since I've been chair. And policies are one of the main ways that the Board of Education impacts the district and tells the district what to do. And we have undertaken a thorough review of all of our policies so that we can do that. And I'm running because I love what I do. I love the Columbia Public Schools, and I'd like to continue the good work that we've done.
Paul Harper, thank you. April Farrell, your opening statement, please.
So I can echo John and Paul. We were all 3 elected. I call them my boys in 2023, and we're running for re-election this year to be able to continue this great work. I am not local. My family moved here in 2000, and currently my husband is a battalion commander in Little Rock, and my 2 children have now graduated Hickman High School and are both in college. I've now spent about 20 years pretty much dedicating everything to Columbia Public Schools. I've kind of been a jack of all trades. I did work in IT at the university. I was a real estate agent for Remax for over a decade. And my first focus was always, what can I do to help out with the schools? And then everything else filled in around that. And so I can't imagine doing anything other than serving our community through this avenue. In the past 3 years, I've served on the policy committee all 3 years, and Paul and I work very closely on tracking those and also trying to get the word out that we want feedback from the community. And we've had several policies that, based on community input, we have made changes to or incorporated or brought up for discussion. And then I also serve as the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee, and we'll be working on a next 10-year master plan, which we'll be engaging the community in with soon and deeply, because it will drive our plan. The work is hard. It's incredibly time consuming. It can be frustrating as all get out. And it is incredibly rewarding. And I cannot imagine doing anything different. So I hope I'm able to do that for another 3 years.
April Farrell, thank you. Our next candidate is Carrie Hussein. I just want to say water, coffee, and Gatorade. Man, you are coming for all kinds of possibilities here. That's the most I've ever seen at one of these forums.
I'm trying to set the record.
You did.
Drinks on the dais.
You have said it. Your opening statement, if you would, please, sir.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for letting me join you this evening. My name is Carrie Hussein. I am a Columbia native. I was born at University Hospital in the summer of 1973. I am a proud product of Columbia Public Schools, attending K through 12, Fairview Elementary. As John mentioned, I was at West Junior High School, and then I graduated from Hickman in 1991. Went off to see the world, went off to college, went off to medical school, ended up back in St. Louis for about 25 years, and ended up moving back here a couple of years ago. My family has been part of Columbia Public Schools since 1958. A gentleman by the name of Don Farreau brought my grandfather, legendary football coach Dan Devine, here in 1958 with his family to coach the University of Missouri's football team. And we've been part of public schools here ever since. My mom's entire family, I have cousins, my brother and I, and now I have 3 kids in the district. A total of 17 members of my family have been part of Columbia Public Schools over the decades. I brought my 3 kids here because that's why I'm here. My twins, Charlie and Maggie, are at Mill Creek in 4th grade. My son, Danny, is a freshman at Rockbridge. And for the first time in my adult life, I have time to dedicate to something that I'm so passionate about. I was a professor of surgery and a trauma surgeon at Washington University and Barnes Hospital in St. Louis for over a decade, working 100-hour weeks. And I've made a decision to come back to my hometown, be near my family, my kids. And I do have time to dedicate to this. And this is a passion of mine. I was an educator at WashU. I'm on national committees for surgical education, and it just seemed something that I wanted to be a part of. I also want to make it very clear that I'm not running against anyone in this election. I'm running for school board. I belong on this school board, I believe. I could do a lot of great things, but I'll be the first one maybe that's not greatly political to say this, but I have nothing against the great folks to my right. I just feel like it was time for me to be part of this, and I want to be a part of it, and I think I can really help the city of Columbia and our kids. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here tonight, and I hope that you guys will give me your vote.
I forgot to mention when we got started that we do have a timekeeper up here on the front, and so you'll be holding up 30-second, I think, warnings, and then when it's time to stop. We'll start on our questions. Paul Harper, I want you to answer this first, and I'm going to start with something that was in the Missourian this morning, actually. There was an article in the Missourian talking about in Jefferson City, they're discussing whether to move the school board election to November. And so this is a 2-part question for all of you to answer in your turn. What are your thoughts about if it were a November election rather than an April election? And there was also talk in that article that Jefferson City was legislators were considering moving the school board positions from 3 to 4-year terms. So it's kind of a two-pronged question there. Your thoughts about that particular legislation that was mentioned in the Missourian this morning?
Well, I'm pretty neutral when our elections are, but I do think that it's probably important to keep on April, because April are the nonpartisan elections, and really the local elections should be nonpartisan. What I have found both before and after I was on the board is that no matter what side of the spectrum you are, the local issues aren't partisan. The local issues are what is best for our children, what is best for our community. And that is not like the nonsense that we see at the state or the federal level. We all get along. We all agree what a lot of those things are. And these are nonpartisan positions. So I do think they should be on a nonpartisan election date. As far as the time, I actually think 3 years isn't enough, because we're just now getting started after 3 years. And we're just now gaining momentum of what we've been doing. We are trying to transform the district into being better at communication, into ensuring that all of its policies are both employee and student friendly. And we have this momentum building, and then 3 years later, we're running again. Some urban school districts actually have a 6-year term. And so, I actually think that the terms being longer would be a good thing, because it would allow people to have more experience and to remain on the school board and do better work in the long term.
I was going to ask this as a follow-up question, but you've already brought it into the conversation. So I'm going to ask you before I go to the next three and ask them to answer the same question. Because in that article, it did mention something about the fact that November elections are pretty much identified with a party. If you had to identify with a party to run for school board, would you run for school board?
I've been involved in partisan politics. I don't believe that I would as a part under the school board, because I truly believe that as a community, I serve the community. I don't serve a party. I don't serve a special interest. I serve the community. And like I said, on the local level, it's not conservative. It's not conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. On any particular issue, people across the spectrum can be on that issue. And I think it's important that school boards stay that way.
Thank you. April Farrell. So 3 questions here. Would you run if you had to identify with a party? Do you like the idea of expanding the term to 4 years? And what do you think about moving the school board election into November?
90 seconds.
90 seconds.
Well, since that, he got 2 minutes because that was a follow-up. So we give you 2 if you need to.
You don't ever want to give me more than, trust me.
That chair is electrified. So.
Yes. As far as elections, November or April, I will say I didn't have the opportunity to read the article today because I seem to always have a paywall. But so I think Paul makes some really good points, because our local elections and local things that are on our ballot are typically not partisan issues. Everyone cares about educating our students. As far as what I declare a party, if I had to declare a party if I was running, I'm not really sure, because I don't, when I get contacted by families or teachers with an issue or concern and can you help me out, I'm not going, hey, what party are you with? So I can decide whether or not I'm going to help you. So I don't know that it's even relevant, in my opinion. Yes, I mean, they can ask us to do anything. I don't know. It would be a bridge I'd have to cross if I came to it. The third question was
moving to, let's see, you answered about November, 4-year terms.
4-year terms. Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. Prior to us coming on the board, and maybe even some of us were recommended that we should probably not say or plan to do a whole lot of anything our first year. We don't have time to sit around and do nothing for 1 whole year. But there is a significant learning curve and there's a lot of work to be done. And so you need to be able to jump right in, get on board, learn, spend a lot of time learning all the ins and outs, all the details, how to make decisions, what factors you want to decide in a decision. There's a lot of stuff to learn. And like Paul said, you know, we've also had a lot of changes recently. And so there's a lot to work on to get under our feet. I think 4-year terms would be excellent.
Carrie Hussein, same questions for you, asking about, and there's not a movement to say that you need to put your party, but I appreciate you all playing along with this because I was just curious about it. And the argument to move it to November would be to get a larger turnout for the elections. So I don't think that's a statement on you, although I think it's a statement on us voters or we voters should come out to vote when that's most important for our local government, be it schools or city council. Having said that, we'll go back to the candidates who are more important, and that would be a 4-year term, November election, party affiliation.
Thank you. So I was actually going to say that my only concern about the April election is the turnout. Obviously, especially in the current climate, November elections are widely supported and attended. And I think school board is an incredibly important, local politics, local elections are very important. But I do agree with the other folks about sort of distancing yourself from the fact that this is not a down ticket situation. This is us taking care of the kids and the teachers in the Columbia Public Schools. So I'm kind of torn about that. I do think that if we had them in November, it would be more attended. But again, you pointed it out; it's on the voters. Let's get it out there. Let's really advertise these elections, and let's get people out to vote because they're very important. Having not served on the board, I would defer to the expertise on, and I do. I've been part of committees. I've been part of boards. I've been part of. Right now, I sit on the Mill Creek PTA board, and I was just elected to the newly reestablished City of Columbia PTA Council board. And I think terms are important. I think we need to be able to do the job that we are elected to do. So I think, changing it from 3 to 4 years would be great. Personally, sitting here right now, why not add an extra board member to the board and make it even or an odd 7. Anyway, and as far as partisan, I am politically active. I have my own views. But this is, again, I agree. I don't think something like a public school board or public schools is a partisan issue. I feel strongly about certain things that are happening at a federal level that we need to protect our kids and teach them and educate them appropriately. But I would not condone any sort of partisan facts with the election.
You're talking, you offered to add another person to the school board. Listening to the answers from the previous two, I was thinking we just make it a lifetime appointment like a Supreme Court judge, since you need extra time to do that. John Lyman, I know you know what the questions are.
Yeah, moving the election to November would obviously have a lot of, there would be some positives there because there'd be more folks that would be getting out to vote. One of the big negatives that was brought up in the article that some proponents against, the measure was a lot of money is spent on November elections. And I don't know that we want to get into something where we're spending, tens of thousands of dollars on the short side for a school board election. School boards, that's local governance. There is no greater method of local governance than a school board. And so adding in whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a libertarian or any of those other things, it's going to muddy the water. It's going to bring in a lot of those outside forces that don't care about what's going on in your local school district. They want to get somebody on a board somewhere to make decisions that are going to help them, not what's going to help out the community. So I would be hesitant to, support a move to November. I think Columbia is smart. Columbia is also, we got a lot of really smart folks here that are engaged in the community. They know when our elections are and people, show up. The 3 to 4 year term, I agree with what everyone has said. You learn a lot. It's a lot of drinking from your fire hose, that first year. Having another year would be good. After 2-3 years of processes and policies and procedures and things, you really start to see some of those impacts. Having another year or two, I think, would be positive. And then, it's got to stay nonpartisan. I don't want it to be something where someone is fearful to come talk to me or ask me a question about something going on in their school because I've got a letter after my name.
April Farrell, you're going to be first on this one. I'd like for you to identify a problem that the school district is facing, and then what would be, in light of that problem, what would be the school board's role in addressing it?
Oh, wow. Pick something. What is a problem facing the district? Well, I think one of the things that a lot of us have been focused on and asking a lot of questions about lately is behavior impacts in our schools. Throughout the country, we're hearing about increased challenges in the classroom that both teachers are having, students are having in their learning environment because of what are termed, behavior, increased behaviors. We've been asking administration and looking at data to say, hey, whatever we're doing is not working. And so what do we need to be doing differently? Recently, for several months now, we've been looking at the bully policy. And as you can imagine, bullying is a behavior and it impacts other students. And so we're looking at the bullying policy to improve it, to outline better supports for our students who might be experiencing these things, to hold people accountable and collect data and be able to address the situation and focus on areas where there might be a problem. In our last cultural survey, 16 of our schools, 20% or more of the students reported that they felt bullying was tolerated. That is their reality. Now, I don't know if that's what's happening because I don't have the data to back that up. And so we're looking towards that. We have a big focus that we need to place on this. And that's what I really want to help us do in the next 3 years.
Thank you. Carrie Hussein, same question. Identify a problem that the school district is facing in your opinion, and then what do you think the school board's role would be in addressing it?
So not to piggyback too much on what April just said, the first thing that I wrote down when you wrote the question is bullying, but I will mention just quickly, I've had, when I first announced my candidacy, I have a lot of friends, you can imagine, born here 52 years ago and have friends that are still in the district with kids. Myriad of my friends reached out to me and said, you have to address the bullying problem in Columbia Public Schools, like begging me and like as if I could do something about it. But certainly as part of the school board addressing policy and addressing and making it an out in the open thing, I think we do have a problem. I not to speak out of school, but I've had personal issues with members of my own family, my own children, being victims of bullying. And I've only lived back in this town for going on 3 years. So it's a very important thing that I think needs to be addressed. And I think the policies are in place. I'm not sure that they're being followed. But I will then switch gears really quickly to talk about special needs, IEPs, 504s. I think that we have policies in place to address these issues. But again, I've had my own children go through these evaluations, and I think they can be streamlined, and I think they can be better. I think some teachers are frustrated because they've tried to get their students into programs, and there's been some pushback. So I think it goes on both ways. So I think those two things I would really want to help address.
All right, thank you. John Lyman, same question. Identify a problem the school district is facing and then the board's role in addressing that problem.
Attendance has kind of been I was about to say pet project of mine, here for a while, but it's something that I've been, really mindful of and watching for a while. The district's goal is to have 90% of our students in seat 90% of the time. There's a variety of reasons for that. One of the big ones being we know that students who are in seat 90% of the time or more do significantly better on all of those standardized tests. On our upcoming board meeting on Monday, there's going to be a presentation on with the CSIP that we're seeing double. If you're in seat 90% of the time or more, you score twice as well on those tests as if you don't. Now, it's not about getting those test scores, but it's about those kids are learning because they're in school. We've got to get back to that. We're seeing a lot of increases on our attendance numbers from our subgroups and for our students overall, but we've got to get better. We're not to that 90% yet. 83% sounds pretty good. That's a B minus in my, that was pretty good for me when I was in school, but 90%, even that's not that great. That's an A minus. We got to get into that 95, that 98%. Our kids need to be in school. So we got to just continue to impress the importance of getting to school on time, staying there the whole time, not having that long lunch and things like that. I think if we can fix a lot of these attendance issues, a lot of the other stuff I'm not saying it's a panacea or anything, but it's a lot of the other stuff is going to correct itself if we can get our students in school 90% of the time or more.
All right, thank you. Paul Harper, same question to you. Identify a problem that the school district is facing and then the board's role in addressing that problem.
Well, apparently in this forum, there's going to be a lot of me too. So I'm gonna agree. I agree that that we need to fix the attendance problem. I agree that we need to add additional behavior supports for students. But just because everybody else has talked about the other issues, I'm gonna talk about another issue facing the school, and that's our professional and hourly staff retention and recruitment problems. If we don't have well-qualified staff, children will never learn. Unfortunately, this is a problem nationwide. We need to make sure that as the 4th largest school district, we are competitive with everybody in the state, not just regionally, because we're not actually in competition with some of our surrounding districts. We're in competition with some of the big districts in Kansas City, Springfield, and St. Louis. So we need to make sure that we have the right environment in place for them. It's not just about compensation and raw money. It's actually about the culture and about the working conditions. And we've done some work on that. We had a working conditions report that we're working on, that April's committee is certainly going to be working on that, some of those issues with long range planning. We need to make sure that we have the policies and procedures in place to help our educators educate. And that's part of what the policy committee has been doing, is making sure that those are clear, understandable, and that they're being followed. I think all of those things are very important. I think it's also important whenever it comes to teacher retention, and that's to build trust in the school system. But I can't talk about that because now I'm at stop. So.
Do you have one sentence you could say? If you want 30 seconds extra, I can give you that on the follow-up.
All I'm going to say is that, we all know after COVID, people lost some faith in the school district. We need to do better about communication. We need to do better about explaining exactly what we're doing. We need to communicate with people where they communicate, not just in ways that we want to. And so I do think that's a part of the culture that attracts teachers.
I see an indication that John would like 30 more seconds
Yeah,
for.
I'll just throw it out there. While all of us, and as I was writing down, I felt bad writing down all of the problems that I see that are currently in the district. It's important to know that Columbia Public Schools is a high achieving school district, top 15% in the state when just looking at APR. This is a high achieving school district. Everybody has got issues and things. They're all the same across the board. As a board, we just need to continue to work as a group with the district administration to educate the community on what those issues are, how they can help group project fix these things.
30 seconds.
Thank you. One other thing that I just wanted to add, that I'm doing this as a grassroots thing, as sort of as a surrogate for my friends and family and other folks. One thing that was brought to my attention as well is the substance use education. Obviously, we're going to have substance use issues across the country, but education for our children. With legalization of marijuana, which I'm not against. As a physician, I've used medical marijuana many times for my patients, and it's worked wonders. But I think that I'm old enough, and some people in this room are old enough to remember Nancy Reagan and the DARE and the Just Say No. It was wonderful, beautiful. It was great. It didn't work. Okay, the message was exact on key. It did not work. We need to figure out exactly what to do to educate our kids on these kind of issues. Thank you.
April Farrell, you're the only one who hasn't taken extra 30. I don't want to leave you out.
I'm good.
Okay. Next question, we're going to start with Carrie Hussein. How would you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member?
That's a great question. And having not been on the board yet, but attended the board meetings, I've attended Paul and April's policy meeting. I see how hard they work. When I first applied, handed in my packet, I was basically told to expect to spend almost like a full-time job. And the interesting thing is, and while most of us are, you can question the pathology of someone who goes into trauma surgery. I'm used to working 100-hour weeks. That is a norm. I now have time, because I'm not doing 100-hour weeks at a major academic shop. I have time to dedicate myself. Currently, I travel around Missouri, and I help level 3 trauma centers sort of beef up to become like level 2 and help take care of their regional areas. It's very rewarding, but I only do it part-time. The other part of the time I consult from home by reviewing catastrophic cases, injured patients, and I sit in front of my computer and I do that. So I actually have the time to dedicate making this a full-time, part-time, 3/4 FTE, whatever you want to call it, full FTE. And I'm committed to that. And that's a reason why when I knew I was moving back, when I left St. Louis and I was coming back to my home in Columbia, the first thing that came to my mind was, what am I going to do to help my community? And this is what makes the most sense.
So for Carrie Hussein, that was a future tense question. For the next 3, it's going to be, how do you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member? John.
Thank you. My kids, if they were watching, they'd probably all be listening and, trying to figure that out. This is really a multi-hour-a-week unpaid internship. It's fantastic work, but it can take a tremendous amount of time doing it. The kids hate it when we're sitting at the dinner table. Again, my wife's a teacher, so the kids know we're talking about school stuff at dinner. I'm currently sitting as the board president. In my 8 hours at work today, I probably spent an additional 3 or 4 on the phone with either, Paul's the vice president, our board administrator, the superintendent. I had an hour-long meeting with him today on some different things, and it's all the time, every day, all day. It'll be late at night, and it's going to pop up. My family kind of expects it to happen. They know it's going to happen, but it is one of those things that there are some barriers, or there are some boundaries. Folks know that, hey, if it's 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's probably not the best, unless it's Miss Farrell. That's fine. But it is a balancing act. It is something that you do have to do. There is a tremendous amount of time that you have to dedicate to this job to be proficient at it. It is hours and hours and hours of reading. It is phone calls, it is text messages, it's emails, it's meeting with folks in the community. I'm fortunate at my job to be able to have that time to be able to do that. I'm thankful that everyone, that's sitting up here also has, that time.
Paul Harper, we come to you with the same question. How do you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member?
Well, I think if you ask my wife, the answer is that I don't. I pretty much have 2 speeds, on and off, and I mean, I love the work, but it does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of phone calls. But I think we've been doing tremendous work. We just met, just yesterday, talking about what's going on in policy. We've, John and I had a conversation today. April and I talk a lot of nights about that. And we do dedicate a lot of time that people, quite frankly, don't see to this endeavor. I would say that most of the school board members spend, 20 extra hours or more a week dealing with things, dealing with the district, taking time off to go to school events, taking time off to go to meetings in the evening, to go to community events. I think all of that goes into being a good school board member and being active in the community. And thankfully, I also have a job that I get a lot of vacation time working for the state, so I'm able to do those things, and I am very happy to do it, and I hope that I'm elected again to continue doing it.
Thank you. April Farrell, same question to you about balancing personal obligations and school board obligations.
So the boys laughed at me because I can't tell you how many of the board members would like for me to get a job, because there really isn't any balance. It's an obsession. Maybe I need to be seen about that. I don't know. During our first election, I remember the first board meeting, I had already spent a lot of time at board meetings and reading board documents. But for that first meeting, I think it was 18 hours of reading all the things on the agenda to make sure I had all the information to vote. I do try, and I think it's probably pretty new in the last year that my husband does try to come home weekly because he's in Little Rock. And so I do try my hardest not to do board stuff on the weekends, but I just went to Florida where I kept texting everybody. So It's very hard to find. I mean, I personally can't find a balance, but that's because it's something I'm so passionate about and I love. You know, if I find a good book, I'm going to read it for 8 hours. Well, I love this, so this is what I do. And my brain can't think about doing something else. So there is no balance.
You've kind of, I think, maybe started to answer what I'm doing as a follow-up to all of you. And you cannot say because you love children, that is not an acceptable answer to this. In 30 seconds, why put yourself through this? Because a lot of us say that's insane. You're working another full-time job almost for free, and don't say, I love the Columbia Public School District. Is it ego? Is it just passion to want to work hard at something? How do you define this?
So that's a great question. So I'm not going to lie, ego might be part of it, but I also will sit there, and I said this to the teachers union last week, as a product, K through 12 of Columbia Public Schools, I am here because of my primary school education, period. I owe, and I've said it before, I owe Columbia Public Schools everything. I am a doctor. I am what I am today because of the incredible education that I received, and I want to continue that. I think that there have been some ups and downs. When I was a student, you know, we talk about the Nancy Reagan years. Her husband came and danced with the CUPE at Hickman when he was president of the United States because we were that awesome, and I want to bring us back there.
So John Lyman, why do you do this?
I talked about running for the board for a long time, and finally at the kitchen table, my wife looks at me and just goes, well, would you just do it already? So it's a little bit that, but then it's also, one of the things that I really enjoyed about being a student in, you know, at Rockbridge and at Mizzou was I enjoyed the reading. I enjoyed the research. I'm trying to not say I had a really good study skills teacher in middle school because she's sitting right there. But I really enjoyed doing the work. It is fun to be collaborative with the rest of the board, with the administration, with the community. It's just, it's exciting work.
Paul Harper, same question.
Well, public service is in my blood. I've pretty much worked most of my life for not-for-profits, government entities, or the state government. I have to have activities where I feel like I'm doing good for the community or for the world. And there is nothing better in my mind than ensuring that the children in my community are educated. I can't imagine any other important position to be in. And I find that those dedicated public service jobs fulfill me.
Thank you. April Farrell, you mentioned passion a little while ago. You might be expanding on that. Maybe not. I don't know.
You know, civic responsibility, civic duty. I was just thinking as they were talking, you know, even back in college, I was the philanthropy chair for our sorority. When my kids started, Ridgeway taught me that education is a collaborative effort between parents, teachers, and students. It takes all of us to make it work. And in today's world, so many parents are so busy. I felt like this is an area that I can step up. I can help out the schools, parents, and students and advocate for their needs. And I just love it.
Thank you. We're going to go to a question that has to do about money. And the first part of this question is written by the Board of Realtors. It makes me feel kind of guilty. 2025 was the first year the senior property tax-free affected revenue collection in Boone County. Since CPS is primarily funded with local taxes, how do you think the district should react to declining local revenue? And that's John Lyman first on this one.
We have a really, really good finance team at Columbia Public Schools. They have done a fantastic job over the last several years in making sure that we are responsible with the public money that we get. It's public money. It needs to stay public. That might be a question for later, but yeah. That team does a fantastic job and has been prepping since, I think, pretty much since we got on the board. The first year that I was on the board, I was on the finance committee, so started hearing things about the fiscal cliff and things coming like that from the state. This being a more local sort of thing, we do have to watch what it is. We have a payroll to keep. We have services that we're providing to our students. We have thousands of square feet of real estate, of property that we have to maintain. A lot of maintenance in those buildings has been deferred. We're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the millions of dollars worth of that stuff that needs to happen to make sure our schools are those palaces that we want them to be for our students. So we pay attention to all of those things, where the money's coming from, how often it's coming, when it's coming. We've got a budget for all of those things. So that declining local revenue is obviously something that we are taking a close eye on and figuring out where can we make cuts, and keeping those cuts as far as possible from the classroom. We don't want to get anywhere near cuts that are going to impact things that happen in the classroom.
Paul Harper, same question to you. I'll just simplify it. It's basically Columbia Public Schools primarily funded with local taxes. How do you think the district should react to declining local revenue?
Well, I mean, we're going to have declining local revenue. We have declining federal revenue. And of course, we're going to have declining state revenue potentially. So we are going to have to take a look. I think that the Finance Committee has actually started some of that work. We need to figure out which contracts have to go away, which stay. Like John said, though, the most important part of that is you have to prioritize, and the things that directly touch students have to be the last thing to go. Staff, behavior supports, all of those things that are actually in the school that touch students' lives have to be the last thing to go. So what do? Most of our budget is actually payroll. So when we make cuts, we should not be making cuts at the lowest levels initially. Hopefully we'll never have to get that low. But it is a cliff that is out there, and it is something that we need to discuss, and we have started that process, started the process to determine exactly what can and can't go, and what needs to be our priority. And of course, our priority number one at all times has to be our students and the educational environment of our students.
Thank you. April Farrell, same question to you, dealing with the declining local revenue.
So 94% of our funding comes from state and local resources. So every time you hear talks about a lot of changes in Jeff City that they're thinking about passing with taxes or any kind of property tax freezes, things of that nature, that will impact our funding for public schools. And, it's another ditto moment, but Dr. Klein and I were actually just talking last week about, if we're having to look at any kind of cuts anywhere, and particularly when it comes to if there's any staffing cuts that are needed, the absolute last place that should be is anybody that's dealing with students directly in the classroom. The positions that directly impact the education of our kids, we cannot be messing around with those. If anything, I believe there's areas where we need more bodies to support those students. And so that might be a restructuring of how staffing is. We do need to look at duplicate contracts. Do we have duplicate agreements with a variety of third parties where we're getting similar services or similar products? Can we streamline that? I know Finance Committee is looking at various options of things of where can we start looking for different funding that we can save money on.
Carrie Hussein, same question to you about dealing with the declining local revenue.
So this is a tough question, and I defer that I understand the Finance Committee is doing a great job, and I agree with that. Now, the issue is, so when I was, the city of Columbia has tripled in size since I was born. And the district, the number of students has doubled in size since I was a student in the last half century. I think looking at the budget and really making some difficult decisions. I was asked in my little screening process with the CMNEA a couple weeks ago about what would I do about money. The last thing I want to do is, or would even advocate for, is decreasing funding, like these guys said, towards our teachers or anything to do with the schools. But I do think that we can, it's something as simple as let's get a forensic accountant come in and look really deep at the budget. This may not be a popular opinion, but we talked about putting your money where your mouth is. I lived in Clayton, which is a a well-off area in St. Louis, which is also considered one of the top 2 or 3 school districts in the state of Missouri. And we want to be that here in Columbia. That's our mission. You paid to live in Clayton. You just did. And people who, you would live in a 1-bedroom apartment just so your kids could go to Clayton schools because the cost of living and the taxes and everything else. So let's talk about the girl in the room. If you want a really great district with the funding to educate 20,000 students, you may have to look inward, and it may not be popular, but I think that we need to look at that.
I'll do a follow-up, and we'll start with John Lyman on this. Again, most of you, if not all of you, mentioned that in looking at cuts, you would not cut something that directly impacted the student. So what could possibly be cut, in your opinion, without touching that?
Golly. So this past November, we went to the MSBA conference in Kansas City, and I attended a session, and I cannot remember all of a sudden which district it was, much smaller district in St. Louis, and what they did. And they actually sent a survey out to the community and to all of their staff and said, rank every single thing that we spend money on in the district. What's the most important? What's the least important? The most important thing was salaries, et cetera, and benefits. Those bottom things, that district cut them right away. They were like, those individual little things, we don't need those anymore. So that's the first thing that I would do. I wouldn't pick it myself. I'd ask our faculty and our staff, what do you guys not need, not want, don't think is necessary? That's where we'll cut.
Paul Harper, same.
I was actually in the same conference and went to the same thing. And I agree. One of the things that we need to do, and quite frankly, we need to get better at it, is ensuring that our community has input in these things. And that means that as we're doing the long-term planning, as we're doing potential cuts, we need to make sure that we're hearing from our community. What does our community think need to be cut? Because I think that this behavior support or this administrator maybe is somebody who should be cut, I may learn from somebody, no, do not cut that, because that has far-reaching implications that you don't understand. And so I need to make sure that as we are doing this, as a part of the process, we're hearing from the community, we're hearing from our mainline teachers, and ensuring that they have an input in the process, so it's just not arbitrary from the board.
April Farrell, in your initial answer to this question, you said something about looking at overlap on contract things. So that's a start to the answer. What else would you like to add?
That's definitely a start. I mean, I've done a lot of fundraising for Columbia Public Schools, and I always talk about, the finding the dime, and so, it's great if I can find $50 million to save someplace else. But if I can find $1 million here and $1 million here and $1 million here, I'm good with that too. And so I know we've already started looking at some travel expenses. Maybe we can have some savings there. I was not in the conference that the guys were in, but I like that district cut the lower things, and I would want to ask our parents and our students about those as well, which would be very informative. And we're going to be getting information from the strategic plan here in the next few months that's heavily community involved, that could drive some of those decisions.
Carrie Hussein, same question for you.
Yeah, I agree with these folks. Looking at the people in the trenches are the people that know what is best. We can help by offering guidance and wisdom and experience, or playing around with the numbers. But when I was at WashU, not only am I a trauma surgeon, I'm a critical care doc. We built a 36-bed, one of the largest surgical ICUs in the country, state of the art. It was considered the standard. And the first thing we did was go to the ICU nurses and say, before we spend billions of dollars on this conglomeration, what do you guys need? What's wrong with what's happening now? What are we going to put in? Everything from the monitors. Can you see the monitors when you walk in the room, to everything else? And I think that's an important way to go about things. 30 seconds isn't very long.
No, it's not, but I appreciate you all. And we're
just
pretty
hit on a roll with
we're pretty lenient here, and that's okay. You can finish your thought. There's so much agreement between everybody on this panel that I'm trying to come up with a question that might show some differences. So I'm tempted to ask, what's your favorite school in the district? But
no comment.
I figured that I would not get anybody to answer that, so I probably won't be able to ask that. But that might come up with at least something you don't agree on. So this will start out with Paul Harper here. I'm a teacher in the district. Again, I'm throwing a lot of love to the Missourian today. Maybe I'll get a free subscription from this. But so the article was talking about how insurance cost, I think it was 29.9%, but let's just be realistic. That's 30% increase in my health insurance cost. I'm a teacher in the district. I look at that today and I say, that it doesn't make me feel good. What would you tell me?
Well, that article I did see, and it is difficult as an employer. All employers are dealing with this, and that's that insurance costs are going up. I feel very strongly that we need to pay our employees insurance as we always have, and that's 100% for employee. Anytime we ask our employees to pay extra, it's a cut of their salary. And as I said, whenever I talked about the critical concern of the district, if we're cutting salary, we are cutting our competitiveness with other districts. That's not something that should be cut quickly. That's something that we need to continue to pay for because we need healthy teachers. We need their families to be healthy so that the teachers can come to work. So it is a critical issue, and we do need to work to ensure that is not one of the cuts we take in the long term.
April Farrell, I'm a teacher. I've seen that. I said, oh my goodness, that's what are they going to do? Throw that on me?
I actually got a text while I was sitting in the parking lot from an employee from that article. And I'm going to say something that might not be popular or well received, but I saw that first thing this morning, and it was the first I had heard of it, and I sat on the board. So this was news to me. So I'm still gathering more information. From what I understand, the Finance Committee discussed these issues last night, that health cost in this country is astronomical, and we're at a point where, something's got to give. The way the article read it, I read it as it applies to all the premiums. My understanding is that the district intends to still cover the employee's cost. The 29% applies to dependent coverage. Again, I wasn't in the meeting, but that is my current understanding. But I have very limited knowledge at this point. But it is imperative, Paul makes a great point, is that if we're going to raise your premium $200 a month, we just cut your salary by $2,400 a year. And for some people, that is a significant amount of money. So it's definitely something that the board needs to learn more about, for those of us who don't sit on the Finance Committee.
This ought to be good. Carrie Hussein, you're from the medical community.
90 seconds is not going to be enough. I've been dealing with this from the day I decided to go to medical school, which was when I was 5 years old. So anyway, no, all kidding aside, seriousness, universal health care has been something that I have been trying to push my entire adult life. That's not happening now. I will tell you, the first thing I will say to these teachers is, I feel you. When I left academia, I have been on the exchange myself with my kids, and we knew this was coming. We heard it. It was screamed from the rooftops. We knew that January 1st was going to change things, and we all, or at least some of us, put our heads in the sand. My premium went up $400 a month, and my deductible is unaffordable. I went to pick up a diabetic medication last week, and they asked me for $900. It is a problem, and I am passionate about that. Now, what does that have to do with our teachers? I promise you that retention and benefits is what we need to do. I will also tell you that there is an election, not for school board, but for other things, this coming November.
John Lyman, same question.
So, yeah, my wife is a teacher. Like I said, my wife's a teacher in the district. She has been for 20 years. And I think it was a decade ago or so where we took the kids off of her insurance and put them on mine, because it flipped. It became a point where it was cheaper for them to be on my insurance at my job than it was for her to be at CPS. That's not a dog on the district. That's the name of the game. You figure out where the cost is. It's unfortunate that it's healthcare that we're talking about here. You know, we were talking beforehand, some of us, all of our kids, us have been sick. It's not something that is fun. And so having to have that cost in the back of your mind is concerning. I echo April's concern about just learning about this. I saw the article this morning and went, oh. I am thankful, though, that our finance committee did table things until next month to learn more. It wasn't something where they were like, oh, hey, here's the information right now. You have to make a decision right now, and we're not leaving until you make a decision. It's, no, hold on. We're going to get more info. We're going to ask more questions. We're going to make sure that this is something, you know, that we can do before making that decision. Changing the district from having that 100% coverage for our employees, that's a non-negotiable to me. We have to, I mean, it's a benefit to working in the district. We cannot take that away. We know, I was talking earlier about attendance for our students. Same goes for teachers. Our substitutes are fantastic. A lot of them are former teachers, retired teachers, but our classroom teachers, those subject matter experts, we need them in our buildings. We need to make sure that they have the care and the support that they need. So we need to continue doing that.
Would anyone here want to have 30 seconds to add to anything that you've said? And I think I started that question with you, Paul Harper, I think. Okay, all right.
I think we're all pretty similar.
We'll move on to another question then. The district recently sued the state of Missouri over what it calls the unconstitutional provision in Senate Bill 727 to allow charter schools to operate in Boone County. I want to phrase the question this way, and it goes to April for Al first. So you get called in front of a legislative committee in Jefferson City about charter schools. What do you say? Just, it's a theoretical situation. What would you like to tell them?
I love this question.
Of course you do. Of course you do, especially because it's to me first. It's an excellent question. It was one I was expecting and contemplating all day because I never want to get into trouble and speak out of turn. And since we're under current litigation, it makes you go, what can I say? But what I'll say is I think public education is incredibly important and vital. It is the most important thing in this country, public education. And public education is available to all students, regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their challenges are, or what opportunities they have available to them. And it gives everyone the same opportunity to achieve and succeed and to become the next great leaders of our country. We do not have a society that can be sustained if we don't have a well-educated society. And that starts with public education. And it's just vital that we have a public education system. I will admit that my child needed to go online for half days when he was in middle school, but that was our choice. We were able to do that and afford it, and it worked for us. That's a choice we made, and it was a good choice for us. But public education is vital, and I think that taxpayers put their money behind public education. That's where they want their money to go.
I tried to word this so that you didn't have to say yes or no of whether you support the lawsuit.
Right.
But again, I think you're smart enough to know that that's still what the question is asking. Carrie Hussein, the same question to you. You're called, you get to go down to Jefferson City. You've got a committee there, a hypothetical situation, and they say, so what do you think about charter schools?
Well, I am currently sitting here as just a citizen and a parent, and so I don't have a muffler on. I 100% support public schools. Public schools are the backbone of this country, backbone of this community. I'll sing it from the rooftops till you guys are sick of it. I'm a proud product of this public school education, and it put me. The moon was my destination. I am in favor of the lawsuit. I think that the way that things are designed, that what is trying to happen in Boone County I'm against it. I think that the tax dollars need to go to public schools. But here's the caveat. There are parents in this district who are frustrated. And there are parents who are begging for this kind of thing to come into town. And why, instead of turning our back and saying it's wrong, we don't agree with it, we need to talk to them and ask them why. Why are you frustrated with Columbia Public Schools? Why would you rather have vouchers? Why would you rather have a charter school come in and give you different options? What can we do that will make you happy? Because that's where I think that we are not addressing the issue. The other thing is I just do have to say, because it's been brought up on my website, you will see I am very proud. My brother is a director of what they call a charter school for at-risk youth in St. Paul, Minnesota. That school is not what we're talking about here. It is a public school. It just happens to be a safety net type of school that they deemed a charter school back in the 90s. So I can't change what they call their school. So please, there's been a question of, well, how can you possibly be, because your brother, I'm very proud of my brother and what they do. They help kids who are really at need. And I'm sorry I'm going over, but I just need to clarify that. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. I've asked him if he wants to change the name of his school from charter, and he's like, no. It's more of a magnet school. It's more of a public school that helps out with the kid. But anyway, I just want to clarify that.
John Lyman, what would you say?
Man, I knew the question was coming. I was trying to figure out how I was going to frame it, and it wasn't going to be. So I'm trying to not let the dog out of the cage here. I'm a Columbia Public Schools graduate. My wife is a Columbia Public Schools teacher. We have 3 kids in Columbia Public Schools. Columbia is a public school town. People come to Columbia because they want to go to the University of Missouri. They want to go to Stevens. They want to go to Columbia College. They stay in Columbia because of the jobs that are available here. They start and raise families in Columbia because Columbia Public Schools is a high achieving school district that has all of the opportunity and all of the choice that a family could want. I don't know why anyone would want to go anywhere else other than Columbia Public Schools. Yes, like we were talking about earlier, there are issues, there are problems that we are working through, but we're working with our community on identifying those problems and the best ways to solve them. You know, this is my home. I mean, I've been here for 40 years. I can't imagine living anywhere else. Columbia Public Schools, I will always be a supporter of the school district, of the public school system in Columbia, in Boone County, across the state, across the country. It's foundational to who we are. You know, CPS for life.
Thank you, sir. Paul Harper, same question.
Well, in Missouri, around the state, our traditional public schools are the heart of our communities. Friday night lights, all of those things. The way that the charter school statute is written, most legislatures don't actually want charter schools in their area because it'd break that. But they targeted Boone County. I can't talk about the lawsuit, so let me tell you about what some of the reasons why I think that our current scheme for charter schools doesn't help us. First, they're not local. There is no requirement for charter schools to be local at all. So it can be run by out of town interests. Everybody talks about local control. Charters don't have local control. Everyone talks about transparencies, but this not-for-profit corporation doesn't have to be transparent to the community. Doesn't have to ask the taxpayers, as we do, hey, help us out because we're having a budget shortfall. They just get it. They are not beholden to the community at all. Whereas our traditional public schools, as they are in Missouri, are beholden to the community. I have to respond to all of you because you're my constituents. Nobody at a charter school has to do that. So they are very different in Missouri. That being said, there are charter school models that's not the case. There are charter school models that are predominantly hosted by the local public school. That's different. That's not what we're facing here. our charter schools are not beholden to us, are not beholden to the taxpayers that pay them, and are not good for our community.
Thank you. This question, I'll start with Carrie Hussein. I'm going to place you back in Jefferson City talking to legislators there. But first, I need to ask the panel, because I really don't know the answer to this. It seems to me like school choice is equal to open enrollment. Is that true or false? I mean, this isn't a question for the panel to mull over. It just seems to me like the way open enrollment has been described might mean school choice. Is that true or false? Anybody?
Paul?
Right now, it's mostly voluntary by the school district.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we even have a limited school choice in that we allow our school teachers to bring their children into the district, but we don't. I mean, it's whether a district accepts people from out of the district is a district level decision, and quite frankly, as it should be. We should have local control of our local schools.
But when it's being discussed at times in Jefferson City now, it says throw away boundaries, period.
Yeah.
That would be school choice.
In theory,
Yeah.
the devil's always in the details, and that has been thrown around in some of the bills.
Yeah.
Carrie Hussein, an answer on what you would say to those who are advocates of that kind of a school situation in Missouri, where you'd have a choice. I could send my child wherever that I would meet the quota in the school district that was set, saying we can accept X number of students. I would say, all right, I want my child to go to that school, and I'm willing to get them there.
Within the district? And
Nope.
are we still talking
Nope.
about?
Anywhere, any
So
school.
we're talking about vouchers or talking about just your tax dollars?
Well, I mean,
This is
I could send them to the public school in Jefferson City. I might just say, you know what? I drive down to Jefferson City and work there, so I'm going to take my kids with me, and that way I can get them there to school. I can bring them home when the day's over. And if Jefferson City allows that and says, we've got that room, I can choose that, and so be it.
And I'm first. Okay, so I believe that here's my short answer to that. And this may be not politically savvy, and this may be a little bit ignorant, but as someone who grew up here, my parents, my dad came here as a physician in 1968, met my mother. My mom had already graduated from public schools here. They stayed and they wanted to raise their family in Columbia. And I'm now back here with my kids in the district. I think if you live in the district, you pay taxes in the district, you should go to school in that district. And I just think that that's the way that things have always kind of been. Again, I think if you're frustrated, I think if you have an issue, you bring it to the board, you bring it to the administration, and we try to fix it. But I mean, I guess what's the slippery slope here? You live in Columbia. I grew up, I had my kids in Clayton schools. Clayton schools were great. Loved Clayton schools. Are you saying that, okay, I'm going to send my kids to St. Louis every day when I live in Columbia? And I just don't, I don't know where that ends. I don't know where that cliff drops off. And I just strongly feel that if there's an issue with how we're educating our kids in Columbia, we should fix that in Columbia, and the kids should go to school here in Columbia. That's just it's my humble opinion.
And the rest of you don't feel like you need to take 90 seconds. This is really kind of a bad question anyway. But John Lyman, your thoughts on this?
I mean, you ask it like I haven't talked to advocates for, school choice and things like that in Columbia. Columbia Public Schools is a neighborhood school district. You go to the school that is in your neighborhood. That does a variety of things. It builds a culture. It builds a community. Go to any one of our schools. I was going to say elementary schools because those are a little bit different. Those principals are just, man, they get up about what they got going on. But go to any of our schools and you're going to feel that culture, that community that's there. That's built by the kids that live around that school. Go to any playground at any of our elementary schools. The kids that are playing on that playground probably were there, for recess the day before. We're a neighborhood school district. And so removing those lines and saying anybody can go anywhere. Well, now it's just going to get weird. You're going to lose Friday night football, if people are able to go, wherever they want. If you're going to a school, and we want to make sure in the district that your child's or your student's educational experience, is not impacted by the zip code that you live in or the neighborhood that you live in. It should be the same everywhere. They should all be afforded the same opportunities. If you feel like your student's not getting that, get involved. I mean, every one of us did kind of the ultimate thing when it comes to getting involved with the school district, and we're running for school board. But be a member of the PTA. Be a member of, other committees or groups that are out there that are going to try to help those students out. If you see something going on in that school that's not right or not good, go get involved. Sit and talk about it, or saying, hey, let's create a whole nother thing, or let's just get rid of all the lines and we'll just figure it out. That does not solve the problem that you're trying to solve.
Paul Harper, same question.
Well, I said it earlier, our school districts are the heart of our community. On a Friday night in the fall, we can go out and see football. We can see all our friends. We can see everybody who lives in our neighborhood. We're all there. We go to the plays. We go to the musicals. We go to see baseball. That's what our community is. When it starts getting fractured, our communities get even more fractured. And we always people talk about, that white picket fence that everybody talks about. You can't have community if everybody's going every which way and there is no more heart of the community. So I'm a big believer in the community schools, and that's really the heart of our community.
April Farrell, same question to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Probably not. Talking about open enrollment or school choice, and how you would speak to those in Jefferson City that are advocates for that, saying we shouldn't have any restriction. If a school district says I can accept X number of kids from wherever they want to come in the state, there's no problem with me saying bring them on.
I actually also just saw briefly, I'm not sure if I read the entire article, but I just saw briefly last year, a lot of the open enrollment had to do with, if I live in Hallsville and would like my kid to go to Columbia Public Schools, or I live in Columbia Public Schools and I want my kid to go to Hallsville, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The recent article that I just read that I think they were discussing was also related to the inner district. So I'm at Shepherd and I want to go to Paxton, right? And the first thing I would say is you're not thinking about the practical application or the consequences of what you're wanting to implement. Because, while neighborhood school and community and all of those things are important, we also need to have the infrastructure of a building. We have to be able to handle the number of students there. We need to be able to plan staffing appropriately. And if kids and families can just pick and choose every year, we can't really plan for any consistent staffing, consistent education, consistent materials, or anything like that. There, I would be asking the people in Jefferson City, have you thought about the changes that you're making and what the practical implication will be for the districts that this is going to be impacting? That would be my first thing I would be asking.
So what I'm hearing you all saying is that you would like to say to the NCAA, no Wild West in transfers.
Yes.
You should speak
I
to them on
almost
this.
brought up like NIL,
Yeah.
but I didn't. Yeah.
I thought somebody was thinking that. We have exhausted our time for questions and answers, not for closing statements. We'll start with Carrie Hussein for a final 60-second wrap up for you tonight.
I just first want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you for the rest of the panel. I chose to do this because I love Columbia. I'm back in my hometown after a hiatus. I have 3 kids in the district, and I really feel strongly that I can help every kid in this district, including my kids. I feel I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I feel education is under attack in this country. I think that we need to protect our children from what's happening at the highest levels. We need to teach history the way it was it happened. We need to respect the scientific method. We need to let our children read the books that have been written, and we need to fund the arts. And I think as a member of this community, I want to be a part of a board that has that mission in mind. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. April Farrell, you're next.
Again, thanks for hosting this forum. I always enjoy this forum. I come every year. I'm running really, as I said, I can't imagine doing anything else, but I have spent nearly 20 years focused on advocacy for our students and our families and our staff. And it takes a tremendous amount of work to do this job and to make well-informed, educated decisions every time you have to make a vote. And you have to have that commitment in order to do that and have the time to do it. It's just something I absolutely love. And I've got some projects, I got to create a 10-year master plan and I got to get through another 100 policies. So I'm really hoping that you all will vote April in April and let me stay another 3 years.
Thank you. Paul Harper, your final comment.
When I ran, I promised to help improve the district. And I think that I'm partially running on the record that we've made. Since I got on, we have increased teacher salaries significantly and hopefully will continue that. We have improved compensation for summer school and extra duty days. Our APR has gone from 70 to 88.7. We've ensured that the bills are now transparent and on the agenda. We've hired the district's first full-time general counsel to provide legal guidance on the ground. We have reviewed and updated over 200 district policies. As you know, April and I are very proud of that. We appointed a special education task force to get parent input in how that program is operating. We've implemented broadcasting and recording of all board committees and board meetings. And so I'm very proud of the work we've done, and I'm asking for everybody's vote in order to continue that good work. And I'll just end it with my website is paulharper4cps.com.
Thank you. John Lyman, final comment.
Columbia is my home. Like I said earlier, I can't imagine, living anywhere else. I love everything about, the city, the diversity, the restaurants, the parks, the shopping, the music, all of the things. I love the passion that this community brings. Were there 40 people the other night at the city council meeting giving public comment about something? I mean, this is what Columbia is folks coming out and saying, here's what's going right, here's what's going wrong. And then those, folks listening, to those things. As on the board, we've done nothing but be transparent. That was one of the big things that I ran on, 3 years ago, and I want to continue that. We were ugly transparent with redistricting. We added meetings, because we thought we needed more. We kept hearing things from the community about additional thoughts and concerns that they had when we were redrawing the lines for the new elementary school. When we had to, we were on the board 45 days and had to replace a person that stepped down. We had an unbelievably transparent process for that to make sure that the community knew what was going on. It's been my honor, to serve the last year as president and the year before that as vice president. Can't imagine doing anything else. If anybody has questions, my cell phone number is online. Call me. Coffee, beer, whatever you want to do. Let's sit down and let's chat.
Carrie Hussein, April Farrell, Paul Harper, John Lyman, they're on the ballot in the municipal election that comes in April. Some might vote early, so I hesitate to say what that date is, but just vote. You'll have an opportunity to vote for up to 3 of the 4 candidates here. Thank you for being here. We'll take 10 minutes off, and then we'll come back with the council portion of the Mark Farnen Board of Realtors Forum tonight.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Especially on the 7th.
Council, some of those ideas were still forefront in a lot of voters' minds. And I felt that my time and the things that I had learned on planning and zoning really helped me to bring some best practices to council, helped me to move some of those ideas about encouraging affordable housing, maintaining our existing rental stock, and preventing impacts of housing crisis from further affecting Columbia. So that's why I ran. I took over in unopposed term, in incomplete term. And so, I'm only about a year and a half, maybe 2 years in, not quite. I really feel like I need more time to finish the things I started. I'm only just starting to see the fruits of those labors. So I'd like to bring some of those items to completion.
We'll subtract the overtime from future answers,
Sorry.
right? Or I could say you're going to know what it feels like to be one of the public speakers at a council meeting when they get to 3 minutes and the mayor says, thank you.
It's
You can
hard.
take your seat now. She is running unopposed, so I don't know how it's going to benefit her or not, or punish her. Christina Hartman, welcome. We're glad you're here. One of the candidates for Fifth Ward City Council seat. Your 2-minute opening statement.
Hi, I'm Christina Hartman. I moved to Columbia in 2019. My kids were kind of entering that age of where do we kind of really want to settle down, because they're going to go to school and I want them to go to good schools. So it's one of the reasons we picked Columbia. Columbia had a lot of opportunity for us. Been in mid-Missouri for majority of my life, all of my adult life for sure. I'm looking for running to become a candidate because I want to be able to look at the issues that are happening in Ward 5 and really try to make a difference. And for me, that means looking at our infrastructure projects and really examining what is going on with those projects. I want to look at available housing. So how do we make sure that housing is in our ward and has enough for the right different lifestyles that people have, from seniors and getting ready to go into the housing market to seniors that are looking for maybe something different in their lifestyle. I also want to, as a small business owner, I really find that being an employer is a very important part of our society. And so making sure that I really bring that aspect to the council. So making sure that there are good jobs here in Columbia so that people can really flourish in the way that works well for them.
Thank you. Don Waterman, your opening statement, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Don Waterman, and I am currently the Fifth Ward City Councilman for Columbia. I'd like to thank the Columbia Board of Realtors for hosting this forum and all of you for coming out tonight to listen. Moved to Columbia in 2001 on my retirement from the Navy. I've now officially been retired longer than I was on active duty, but anyway, worked for the university, left to go to Chicago for 3 years. I got my master's mental health counseling, came back, worked for Bass Pro Shops, American Outdoor Brands, and retired from full-time work in May of 24. Now I'm down to, as I call it, my part-time job, which is just city council. The reason I'm running for re-election is there's still some things that I ran on the first time that still need to be done. One of my items was infrastructure, which Christina's mentioned. And yes, that's something, a couple of major projects affecting the Fifth Ward that are still pending. One was public safety, police staffing. We've made some progress there. There is the housing issue. The city county housing survey indicated that we have a need for housing, affordable housing at all levels. And that's something that we're going to need to address. And how do we address that? Again, public safety, the homeless. David made reference to the council meeting Monday night. A lot of turnout, a lot of public comment, very passionate issue for a lot of people on both sides. So anyway, the reason I'm running is spent some time learning the intricacies, and there's still some unfinished business that I want to see through.
Thank you. We're going to start with a question, and Christina Hartman, you'll be first on this. The school board members who were up here a little while ago, they were talking about the amount of time and energy that goes into a school board position. They are paid less than you are, but you all aren't paid very much as city council people. You have a little bit of a stipend or whatever you would like to call that. So my question really is, what appeals to you about being a city council member, and what draws you to that, knowing what you're going to be faced with? Obviously, two of the three up here already know this, but we'll start with you. Your anticipation. I'm sure you've heard and have had conversation about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So I really have been involved in the community in very different ways, from doing things like helping Love Columbia paint a fence to maybe even cleaning out some transitional houses. And so I wanted to take that engagement that I was doing in the community and take it to a different level, to where I could really impact and make a change at a systemic, at a policy level, and try to drive change from that aspect as well. I still plan to do that in volunteering stuff, but and I think the other thing that is key is, I do know that it's going to take a lot of time, but being my own business owner, I do kind of have the flexibility in what my schedule looks like and how I can approach this. And one of the things that I want to do is to really be involved in the community and make a difference. And that's one of the reasons that I'm looking forward to being on the council.
Thank you. Don Waterman, same question to you. What does appeal to you about being a city council member? What draws you to the investment that you have to make personally to do this job?
Yeah, to Christina, I certainly empathize with your position, because for my first year on council, I was working full time and doing council work. And it was a challenge. But to address the specific question, as I said, I've lived here almost 20 plus years in total. I love Columbia. It's changed significantly over the last 25 years. As we all know, it's grown and will continue to grow. We're now the fourth largest city in Missouri. It has its challenges. And quite frankly, I simply want to be a part of that, a factor in that, and how we address those challenges that have been iterated before about that are facing the city. So just being able to be a part of that, hearing from constituents, working with council members, again, reference to the meeting Monday night, was a long meeting, but there were several elements of it that were good. And there was a lot of discussion, especially regarding the amendments, and just being part of that process is what interests me. And again, hopefully having, maybe in some small way, an influence on Columbia, both next week and into the next decade or decades.
Thank you. Valerie Carroll, same question to you. What draws you to wanting to be a council member, and what are the appeals to being a council member?
Yeah. For me, this really is all about my community, my neighbors, and the people who live in Central Columbia, and even Columbia at large. I'm passionate about this work. You're right, it can be a time balance. City Council will take up all of the time that you're willing to give it, and I give it most of my time. I think that it's important to me that I'm available to constituents. I use my time to meet with individual constituents who want to talk over any issue on the agenda. I hold open office hours, and I spend a great deal of time reading and studying issues that come in front of us. So I know that I'm learning what the national best practices are. As far as time balance, you need to give it what you need to give it. And I've pulled away and pushed back in different seasons. There are seasons where City Council will take all of your time, and there's seasons when you can do some more things during the day. It's important to me that I'm there when I need to be. And so I make the commitment to do that.
Thank you. Don Waterman, you'll be first on this next question. The topic has already come up. I'm going to read the question. Board of Realtors has been talking about a solution to affordable housing in Columbia for many years. Now we're dealing with housing shortages in almost all price ranges and rentals. How would you help create additional housing in Columbia?
One of the things that came out of the housing study was that we need to look at how we can, two things. One is streamlining our process. It's been noted, I've heard from developers, realtors, and it came out in the study that our process is cumbersome. The different steps, the different levels, some of the fees that go into development and building adds to the cost. So how can we address that? Our zoning codes. So basically it would be reviewing the process, reviewing the fees, reviewing the zoning. What can we do? Whether in zoning, can we change some of the zoning to allow for more infill, smaller lots, cottage houses is one option, multifamily. But those are the things that I think we need to take a serious look at that would help in reducing costs. We do have an issue that's going to be coming up, and that is the 2024 building codes. I attended a public information meeting. There was a lot of pushback, if you will, that these are going to add significantly to the cost of construction. So how do we address that? How do we balance that? That's going to be probably the changes that we're going to be looking at or need to address.
You kind of anticipated the follow-up. That was a question that went along with that. Are you hearing about specific code changes? I understand what you're saying about infill, but on the zoning that you just mentioned at the end of your answer there, anything specific that those who are engaged in the industry are saying, this is just too restrictive, this is too cumbersome?
Not so much specifically from the developers, but I think what we hear, what we see is frequently a development or an issue will come before the council, and we get a lot of pushback from people that maybe it's an older neighborhood. They're used to a larger lot size. We just recently had an issue with an accessory dwelling unit. And there was some pushback. People don't want to see that change. And I understand that. You love your neighborhood. But by the same token, change is change. And that's something that we need to take a look at.
All right, thank you. Valerie Carroll, the same question to you, and you can answer the first part. I'll give you extra 30 seconds if you want to. Also, what I followed up with Don about. So the question was, we're dealing with housing shortages in almost all price ranges and rentals. How would you help create additional housing in Columbia?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic, and I can talk about it forever, so I'll try not to. The first thing that I'd like to address would be, I think we need to seriously look into beginning incentive programs to try and encourage both private and nonprofit entities to build more housing, and to have incentives that are linked to creation of dwelling units that are reserved at below area median income. We can do fee waivers, we can do density bonuses, we can do expedited processing. Those are all things that are in our wheelhouse. The other thing that I want to talk about, we don't look at enough what is within our wheelhouse, what's within our purview to work on to make this easier. Our zoning code is a big part of that. These are things that I've worked on for years. Small lots, cottage standards, which is now becoming small lot, allows building of smaller footprint homes on smaller footprint lots. We also worked on unlocking irregular lots. We have a lot of problems with infill. A lot of people have to come to us for special waivers because their development won't fit the weird size lots that we have. I'd like to reevaluate our zoning codes so that we're anticipating what problems we might have and more things can be done by straight zoning with less visits.
Anything you want to add? I know we've already kind of gone over a little bit anyway, but is there anything extra you wanted to add to that? I'll give you the 30 seconds that I gave Don.
I know that time is money to our industry professionals. I know that visits to planning and zoning and to Board of Adjustments are money. And I know that in some cases that's holding us back. So a measured approach to make sure that we're anticipating what areas we struggle with and writing that into our code as opposed to doing everything as a one-off special case.
Thank you. Christina Hartman, the same question to you, the host of this forum tonight. They've been talking about a solution to affordable housing for a long time. Now they're aware dealing with shortages in almost all price ranges and riddles. How would you help create additional housing in Columbia?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things we can do. I definitely think we need to be looking at the processes that are happening within City Hall. Recently, there was a 37 units that didn't go through because of complaints about traffic and infrastructure. We need to be planning ahead for that infrastructure so that when things go through, that they're identified during that process and it doesn't go all the way up to City Council for a vote when there are clear issues that need to be addressed. And so working through that process and making sure that the process can identify those things to reduce the cost. I also think that we need to have abundant and varied housing for different options for people at different scales. So, you know, when we talk about people coming out of high school or college, they have different needs in the housing that they need versus somebody that's trying to grow their family or somebody that is trying to, I don't know, triple their family. Maybe not for me. I have 2 kids, so not that big of a family for me, but and I think you asked about the building codes.
Right. If I was going to follow up, if you wanted to add anything about any code changes or administrative changes that you would recommend. You've already mentioned one, and that would be a process of planning ahead for infrastructure to be ready when development was going to occur.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in terms of the building codes, I know that there's some frustration about balancing maybe some of the environmental issues with some of those new regulations that are going to be coming out. So we need to look at how we balance those things against what's that risk and that responsibility for all parties so that we can have good housing built at the need that's met, that's needed for the different lives, again, for the different lifestyles of people, and making sure that we take a risk approach to that and really measuring it and making sure that it works for people that are trying to develop, people are trying to remodel, or whatever those different cases may be.
Thank you. We're going to move on. And Valerie Carroll, you're first in this next one, sort of related to housing issues. In fact, it very much is related to housing issues. How would you, as the city, how should the city be handling the unhoused in our community? And I understand Monday night at the end of if anybody stuck with it long enough, they were going to get to the homeless report that was offered there at the end of the meeting. And there was some conversation about a way forward on this particular issue. So I'll just put it out there in the general, how should the city be handling the unhoused in our community?
Yeah, this is huge. We have growing population of unhoused community members. I think that the Opportunity Campus, which is going to start operating in the spring here, I think this is a great success for our city. One of the reasons why we've had so many impacts due to homelessness is that we haven't had a 24/7 full service shelter. We've only had emergency shelters that are open for part of the day. I think it's important for us to have 24/7 shelter and wraparound services where people are at. I also think it's important for us to look at the entire housing continuum. This is in part a system of economics and loss of mental health services. It's also in part due to cramping housing. We need to make sure that we don't have any breaks in the entire housing continuum, from emergency shelter to supported group living to transitional housing, all the way to long-term housing that's affordable at any income level. And whenever we have a break in any part of that supply, we have more people becoming unhoused and nowhere to go for the next step.
Thank you. Christine Hartman, same question to you. How should the city be handling the unhoused?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things we need to look at. We need to understand that that part of our community has different needs, just like anybody else. People that have homes have different needs, right? So does the unhoused population. So we need to look at ways that help them during crises. We need to look at long-term sustainable, and then look at do we have enough jobs? Do we have enough housing to help with that? And can those employers be willing to take that calculated risk and help people that are ready to move on to that next stage of their life? Do we have the housing that can support to help get people to where they need to be? And so really taking a look at it in a holistic way and making sure we're analyzing and thinking about all the different aspects that go into different people's communities.
Same question to you, Don Waterman, please. How should the city be handling the unhoused in our community?
I agree with Valerie and Christina that housing is part of it, but I think the Opportunity Campus, I'm looking forward to that opening. I think that's going to be a significant step forward. It will not cure it. It will not be a be-all, end-all, but it is a significant first step, one-stop shelter services, putting them in contact. We got a report, municipal court report in the pre-council meeting Monday, and they were talking about their opportunity docket, I can't remember the formal term, community support docket. Thank you. That when somebody comes in that is in that they connect them with services rather than putting them in jail. So there's that. The Opportunity Campus, like I said, it's going to be a first step, first stop. Where we need to look is then beyond that. I had the opportunity to go to Salt Lake City last November and toured. They have a program out there. It's called The Other Side Village. And there it's kind of the next step beyond that. Individuals that have made a decision to get off the street, turn their lives around. It provides them an opportunity. They have an education program, and then they have a place where they can go. They have entities, enterprise entities that help generate their operating funds. We have some of that here. You mentioned the homeless report we got at the end of council. One of the outcomes of that was we asked or directed the health department to put together a strategic plan, an overarching strategic plan. I actually had an individual today reach out to me has a concern about the homeless. I had met with her previously, and that was her idea. So I put her in touch with Rebecca and said, here, you can be part of creating this strategic plan.
I'm going to do a follow-up on the unhoused, and we'll start with Valerie Carroll again here. So this is a follow-up, a short time period for you on this. What are your thoughts about the city continuing to clean out homeless camps on public property and on private property?
Yeah, this is challenging. I think we need to have more supports for people who are experiencing homelessness. I think that it is best for people experiencing homelessness to be close to the areas where we have mental health resources to support them. One of my concerns has been when we're clearing out camps, where do they go and how does it affect them? I don't want those actions to prolong seasons of homelessness and to exacerbate the issue. And I think that's why it's important that we have enough shelters present and services present so that we know how to circle them back around to shelters when we have an area where they really should not be able to occupy.
Thank you. Christina Hartman, same question to you about the cities cleaning out the homeless camps on public property and private property.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo Valerie's sentiment here. I think that we do have to take an approach that shows care. So when we go into properties, homeless population they don't have as many material things as we have. So when we're taking away the things that they have, are we doing that in a respectful way, a hateful way, or how are we approaching that? And we need to be considerate of all the people in our community when we do that. And so as a property owner, I understand. I get it. I wouldn't want to have to spend money to clean out things that aren't mine, right? But I definitely echo Valerie's concerns and thoughts on how do we provide those services in a way that's respectful to everyone and making sure that we take care of some of our most vulnerable population.
Don Waterman, same question to you about the city cleaning out homeless camps on public property and private property.
It's a challenge. On public property is just that, it's public. And by establishing a camp, you're essentially, I'll use the term homesteading, and that's, we don't want that. We've heard, I hear from individuals that maybe where there's an encampment in a park, that they no longer feel safe using the park or that part of the park. So we're taking that away from the public. That also does need to be balanced with the compassion that, yes, where do these individuals go? And that is a question. That's a challenge. The Opportunity Campus will address some of that and giving them some place to go. Private property, as Christina said, as a property owner, I don't want to be cleaning up somebody else's items off my property. You could have them, call in the police for a trespass violation. They'll get a ticket. Maybe they'll get into the community support docket and hopefully get access to some of the services that they need to deal with whatever issues. Because frequently, not always, but frequently, if someone is homeless, you're looking at either an addiction issue and or mental health issue. So connecting them with those services so that they can get treatment for those is going to be important as well.
I'm going to move on. The homeless and unhoused is a topic that obviously the city is spending time on and will continue to spend time on. And there are other questions about that, but let's move on and get another topic. And Christina Hartman, you're first on this one. The question is written this way. Moon Choi made headlines after speaking at a chamber membership breakfast about crime in Columbia and its effect on the university. Since then, a rift seems to have emerged between the University of Missouri and the city regarding crime and violence. How can the city and university repair the relationship and work together on the issue of perceived public safety?
Yeah, I think having open, transparent dialogue would, one, heal the community, because I feel like they believe that it hasn't been a transparent process. So I think opening that up, making sure it's a transparent process, coming together, I think doing work sessions together would help for both parties. I think also inviting the other college campuses, because we're talking only MU, but MU's one of, there's Stevens College, there's Columbia College, there's other college and college students in our in our town. And so inviting them into the conversation too. If we're going to have leaders from different aspects of our community, we need to make sure we're inviting all leaders of that industry into that conversation. It doesn't just impact one group.
Thank you. And again, I'll shorten the question. Don Waterman, you're up next. How can the city and university repair the relationship and work together on the issue of perceived public safety?
As Christina said, and I agree, one of the things that we need to do is talk. I know I've heard from some individuals that want to have nothing to do with President Choi. Unfortunately, the university is such a significant part of this community. I believe they're still the largest employer in Columbia. They're going to need to be part of the conversation. And anytime you have a disagreement, you've got to talk to resolve it. So we need to work together. What discussions, open, transparent discussions, but not just meetings, but meetings we set goals and say, okay, this is where we need to go. One of the frustrations with what was happening at the end of in September, October, November is the crime statistics that were used. It wasn't either or, it was both and. Both were correct. Both were cherry picked, if you will, from the available statistics. One part of it, violent crime, was showing down. Crimes against community, people, and because we have increased the staffing in the police department, there's more investigations, it actually causes that number to go up. So again, both numbers were correct. And that was a nuance that I think was lost in that discussion. So it's going to be re-engaging, engaging, having the discussion, coming up with some goals, and how do we moving forward from there.
Valerie Carroll, a question for you. How can the city and university repair the relationship and work together on this issue of perceived public safety?
Yeah. This was really, the conversations you're referring to were really affecting the first ward very directly and very personally, I believe. What I think is important when we're discussing issues surrounding safety is that we separate our discussion from violent crime and our discussion from homelessness. They're different. We can't talk about it like it's the same thing. We have different tools for addressing them, each issue separately. Now, Christina mentioned something that I think was really insightful and key here, and that was work sessions. What we're having right now, and I'm not talking about the meeting with the governor, what we're actually having as our work group right now are closed door meetings that are private meetings. And as a result, all of council can't attend and the public can't view what's going on. An open work session where we can have all of the representatives present and it's transparent to the community would go so far towards healing that relationship and so far towards being effective in how we're going to address this. And I agree with what's been said. We need to increase staffing. We've made strides on that. We have about 15 vacancies right now. We are pushing to close those vacancies. We graduated 14 people from the police academy in January. We have another class coming through. I'd like to see a downtown precinct reestablished. I'd like to go down to 10-hour work days. And I'd like to have a traffic unit.
Mm-hmm.
Key to this is gun violence and violent crime. We need to prevent guns from reaching the hands of our youth.
Before I go on to the next question, I have a follow-up question for you. In these closed meetings, are high-ranking representatives of the university engaging faithfully and productively in these meetings?
I think there's faith there. I think we're getting more productive. I think we would be better served by talking to each other and bringing our shared resources to the table, and really addressing what things each partner can influence to improve crime. I don't think that we can finger point, and I don't think we should be saying things to grab headlines. This is not the time, and that's not productive.
I'm trying to interpret your answer right there the best I can, knowing that you probably can't say, but it's a closed meeting, not asking. I guess when it's a closed meeting, we can't know who's participating. Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
You asked if there were ranking members. There are from both groups. It's about who's participating, and it's about what the priorities are, what's being floated as.
I'm just
the
curious
next
about
goal.
whether they're there, not about what the tone is, but if they're there. Don?
Yeah, actually, Valerie and I were both at, I think, maybe the last meeting. And yes, because it's a closed meeting and not announced, we're limited to 3 council members. So it was a mayor, Valerie, and myself. Yes, the President Choi was there. There were some others. And I believe, I'm not sure if they've actually released them or not. Maybe you can help me here, Valerie, but I thought they were going to release the minutes in an effort to enhance transparency. So yes, that we are limited in that, and that makes it difficult. How do you engage council when you can only engage 3 at a time? So yes, if it was, a public meeting, and we could, I think, to Valerie's point, we could do it similar to what we do. Like Monday night, we have a council work session. Okay. We won't be taking public input, but we will be there. It's advertised. Come, show up, listen to us, and we're going to be discussing a topic. And we had one last month where actually it's regular now. The second Monday of every month is a council work session about, whatever topic needs some additional discussion beyond what we can do. And you can have the whole council there. We could expand that to include university as we're talking about this issue and restoring the relationship, the cooperation, and setting some goals, and how can we achieve those together.
Thank you. Christina Hartman, you haven't had a chance to speak on this. I know you're not on the council right now, so you're not privy to these meetings that are closed, but do you have a thought after hearing what the 2 council members have said?
Yeah, I think I would just reiterate my first comment is that it needs to be transparent. They need to have transparent, open sessions for not only the council to be able to be all there, but also for the community to heal and see that our community leaders are trying to work to better the situation, and so that it reduces any type of misconceptions or anything like that.
I feel like I've already done a follow-up to the follow-up, but if you can be really brief, Valerie Carroll, and since you're running unopposed, I'll let you have another comment on this, but make it brief, please.
I will be as brief as I can in response to Don. We have had 3 meetings. Quorum is the issue. We can't have a quorum. We have meetings released from the first, meeting minutes released from the first and third, but not the middle yet. I shared some of my private notes. At the beginning, it was just Barbara and I and DeCarlin Seawood. And so we didn't have a note taker present. And that's something that could be remedied by a public meeting.
All right, thank you. We're going to keep it on the police, focusing on that. Let's see whose turn it is to go first here. I think it's, we'll go with Don Waterman on this one first. Are there additional tools that the Columbia Police Department could use to improve public safety that they don't have now, as far as you know, or anything you know?
I think there's always additional tools. It's just what's useful, cost effective. We just recently had a demonstration about using drones as first responders. And, we have made and that's down the road. And that, frankly, were you able to be there for that, Valerie?
Mhm.
Okay. It's interesting and fascinating. But what we've done so far with Flock, I think has been a great asset, having direct contact with it, be able to input, excuse me, the incident around the first of the year with the shooting at Academy, where the shots fired and the carjacking. Because of Flock, they were able, the highway patrol was able to locate him and, make an arrest, working with us. We were able to input the information. So Flock is working for us. That's just one. I'm sure there's many others. The NIBR system, which is when it comes to tracing guns, allowing them to input information or direct access to it with a very short turnaround to say, okay, this firearm that they've recovered may have been used in multiple instances. One of the things that, we talk about firearms, is accessibility. And unfortunately, what the police tell us repeatedly, many of these have come out of people's cars. They leave them in their cars and they leave their cars unlocked. If you own a gun, come on, people, be smart. At minimum, lock your car, preferably take it in the house at night.
Okay. And I think what you were referring to might have been Dick's Sporting Goods rather than
You're right.
Academy Sports.
My
I just
bad.
wonder if
My
there are any
apologies.
Academy
My
Sports
apologies to
people.
Academy.
Yeah,
Dick's
I don't want
Sporting
them
Goods.
to say, "Oh, wait a minute, that wasn't us." So,
Yes.
yeah. Valerie Carroll, same question to you. Are there additional tools that you think that the Columbia Police Department could use or should use for public safety?
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that just recently, within the past year or so, we've invested in Flock. We've invested in Axion car cameras and body cameras. We've invested in evidence management systems, which was a big time saver, as well as the ballistics reporting through National Integrated Ballistic Information Service. A lot of these things are force multipliers for CPD. They allow us to get by with less staff. I think what we need is more staff. I think force multipliers are great. I think we need is more staff. What I am hearing constantly from my constituents is that they don't want more tools. They don't want faraway police officers. They want to interact on a personal level with the people who are doing the policing. And more staff supports that. And what I'm hearing from the police officers is we need more staff. We need to go to 10-hour work days. We need to have police in regular beats. I don't think that it's the tools that we're missing. I think it's the staff. And I'm happy to support what the police ask for, but I'm going to support the staffing first.
Thank you. Christina Hartman, same question to you about additional tools Columbia Police Department could use to improve public safety.
Yeah, I think staffing is a huge issue. We want our officers to be local. We don't want them working 12 hours a day. We don't want them working so many days that they have to do training on their days off. Like, nobody wants that, no matter what job you're working. And I can't imagine having the stress of being a police officer and then also trying to do that on, just do your training on the side. Like, that's not safe. We need, you mentioned flock cameras. I work in cybersecurity, and I definitely care about data privacy. So for me, that is something that I would not be looking forward to. I do not support that. And I just want to be very transparent about that. Unlocked cars, I definitely think that's an issue. You mentioned it. I recently I live in the 5th Ward, and there were break-ins in some of the cars over there, and people did leave their weapons in their cars, and they no longer have those. And so that does create a potential issue in our community too, whenever that gets left out. And I think I already mentioned local staff, so.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to do one more question. This is the next question. Valerie Carroll, you'll go first on this one. And it deals with the police because you're talking about increasing the number of officers. I had an opportunity to hear the police chief say yesterday that they also are serving out of a very antiquated and old and in need of repair or replacing police station. So my question for you is, how is the city going to pay for more police officers and maybe improve their workspace?
Yeah, this is a challenge because the requests and the needs for policing are increasing as our population increases. And we're looking at less federal income and needing to cover more projects. And we're looking at lower income from sales tax. Already, our police budget is 50% of our general revenue, our general fund. That's not sustainable for us. Most of that, so of that, 60% of it is our employees, salaries and personnel. And I think that's important. I think it's important that we prioritize the personnel. I think it's important that we give them a good work environment. We're going to need to look for alternate sources of funding if that's the route that we need to go. If we're continued to ask for additional resources in terms of police, it cannot be 50% of our general fund.
Christina Hartman, same question to you about how do we pay for more police officers and or maybe in the future a new police station that would be more modern and suit the needs more for this time period in our city's history?
Yeah, I am not as familiar as the city council with every budget line item here, but it is a large portion of our city's budget, and that is very noticeable. And we have to learn to balance that, and we have to look at the contracts that are working for us and the contracts that aren't. And so we need to take a risk and safety approach to that. So analyze that information that we have and look for ways that we can reduce contracts that are no longer serving us.
Don Waterman, same question.
Yeah, that's is going to be the challenge. Chief Saludi said that given the way the city's grown, that we need 50 more officers. So the question is, and in addition to that, that would just get us back up to where we need to be. We probably need to be adding about 4 or so every year, given the way the city continues to grow. The question is, how do we pay for it? As Valerie said, that comes out of the general fund and takes up currently 50+% of it. The general fund fees and sales taxes. Sales taxes are flat, if not declining. Hopefully, I know Trader Joe's has been a smashing success, so maybe we'll see a little bit of bump from that as far as that. But the economic development, which will increase the sales taxes, but that's more longer term. Yes, how do we pay for it? I know there's been some discussion about possibly an increase in sales tax. You know, everything should be on the table. I know that's unpalatable to a lot of people. There was actually a question in the city survey that just recently completed about if people would be willing to pay more in taxes to staff the police. And from the survey, it came back a majority yes. Now, does that mean it'll pass? No. But if that's the way we have to go, again, everything should be on the table. And if that's what we need to do, services don't come free. Services come at a cost. And this is one of those that if we want to clamor and say we need more in public safety, that's going to be more police staffing. And like I said, that's going to come at a cost. So how do we do that? Where do we come from that? You can't cut enough. There's not enough cut in the general fund to pay for it. The other two largest ones, the next biggest one, I believe, is public works, and that's our streets. And we already get complaints about the potholes, so we don't want to take that away.
Okay, we're going to move to a question that will be first offered to Christina Hartman, and then I'm going to rework it for the other two because we know what the answer is to this question for them. I'll rephrase it. For the question for Christina Hartman, council passed the pedestrian safety ordinance Monday night 5-2. If you were already a city council member, how would you have voted on that ordinance?
Hey, so good question. That was definitely very fresh in everyone's mind. So kind of like what I told Mike Murphy yesterday, I think for me, I would have been looking at this from a good governance standpoint. I want to know that the decisions I make are informed with good data. I want to understand my constituents' concerns, and I want to make sure that any policies that's enacted is durable, would be able to withstand the test of time, and really make a difference in our society. I think that we need to be looking at safety, and I think good governance goes along with that. Did I answer your question?
No, you did not answer my question.
Thanks.
Do you want to
Okay.
answer the question? How would
I
you have
would have
voted?
voted no.
Okay, thank you. We know how Don Waterman voted. We know how Valerie Carroll voted. My question then, Don, you're next on this. When there are tough questions like that one, and like the Ashford place, the previous meeting, those, if you watch the public hearings, I could sense that I thought every council member was agonizing and struggling or really working hard to vote the way that he or she voted. So how do you decide how you vote on issues like that?
For me, it's researching it. It's looking at the data, as Christina said, if it's a data related issue, listening to constituents, listening to people, constituents, the public. Many of them correspond, emails. We got a flood of emails about those. Unfortunately, a lot of those were what I call cut and paste. You start reading through them, same. Okay. So, hats off to the organizers. They got a lot of people to send emails, but it was the same email. But listening to those, and then it's thinking through the issue, what is it? What are we trying to do with it? Ashford Place, I understand. I met with the constituents there, the people that spoke again from the neighborhood. And I certainly understood that their concern was that their residential street was going to become the main thoroughfare for that development, to the point about infrastructure being done first. I don't know where that's going to go in the future, but so I understand that. I generally am pro development. In fact, I think I said yes on that, even though it went down. I'm generally pro development, but I certainly understand their concerns with the median safety ordinance. To me, it is a safety issue, as I said in comments. If those were children standing out there or playing out there, it would have been an entirely different conversation. But it is the homeless, and I empathize. There's so many people that are passionate about trying to do something for the homeless, and I understand that, and I appreciated all the comments. But to me, it did come down to a safety issue, and there were some questions about, does the data support? Have we had them in the past? There were some questions about the existing data may not be clear. I know I'm over
You are
time.
going, yep.
But to me, it's also a preventive measure. We don't have to wait for an accident.
Valerie Carroll, how do you decide on these tough issues?
We have appointed boards and commissioners that we have chosen to be experts in their fields. We send a lot of things to them to review. I listen to them. We put them there for a reason, and I listen to them. I listen to my constituents. You all put me here. I'm here to represent you. I can't go off and vote any which way I want. I need to stay true to my values. I need to represent my constituents. I did a ton of research on both of those examples. I did a ton of reading. You know, a lot of times I ask, what are we trying to do? And is it going to be effective? I was concerned about the pedestrian safety measure. I didn't think it was going to be effective. I didn't think that it was going to be enforceable. And I didn't think that it was going to do what it said it wanted to do. When it comes to Ashford Place, I also voted yes on that. I really wanted that development to work. This was a question of infrastructure, and that was on us and not on the developer. We need to get ahead on our infrastructure. We use new development to push infrastructure and not the other way around. That won't work for us, not if we want to keep up with our housing goals.
I'm going to ask you all to be very brief on this one, but it's a follow-up to what you just said. I really do believe that council members, current and future, do the research. And I believe that you hear from a lot of people prior to a council meeting. I find it interesting during the public hearing portion of a council meeting, oftentimes you are accused of already having your mind made up before you get there. But I'm thinking if you've done your research, if you've listened to the input that exists there, that makes sense. I guess my question is, would you ever change your mind having sat there through 3 hours of testimony or 2.5 hours of testimony? Are you open to saying, you know what, everything that I've done leading up to this meeting, I feel good about, but now I feel differently? Christina, you're the first here. You haven't had that experience, but what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's, responsible for any council person to go in there and having researched and collected the information, whether it be from studies or commissions or residents. Like, we have to be responsible in that and come with that information. But keeping that open mind when we're there and we see the crowd and we see the people that are taking their time to come down to City Hall, whether they're taking the day off or leaving their kids out, with their partner to come down and talk to us, we have to be able to listen to that and really hear what our people are saying. There's only so much that can be done in written expression. And so actually hearing and seeing what people are saying is very important to this process. Again, it does go down. For me, the final decision would be all of those things. And is that policy durable over time?
Don Waterman, I think you understand the gist of my question.
Yes. And to answer your question, I almost always, when I go to a council meeting, have a pretty good idea as to how I'm going to vote, having reviewed the data, reviewed the information, reviewed the input. But I do listen. I was keeping track, of how many people said yes, how many people said no. So I do listen. I'm trying to think of a specific incident where public comment changed my mind, and I cannot. But I do listen, and I understand that there's a lot of passion. And going back to the Ashford Place, like I said, I ultimately said yes. That's probably the closest one where I came to actually changing my mind because of the public input. I'm out of time.
Valerie Carroll, same question to you.
Yeah. I want to say you would have to be positively inhuman if you could sit through hours of public testimony and not be moved and not be affected by any one speaker. It always makes a difference to show up and testify. I think the pedestrian safety bill is one that is a very good example of this. We had, back in November, hours of testimony. We highlighted some things that were problematic. We tabled it. We made lots and lots and lots of amendments. We sent it to additional boards. We had additional public input. Then we brought it back for a vote. I don't like changing my mind on the fly. I don't think it's a great idea, but I want all the information. And if the information is going to change something, I will change the trajectory so that we address the problem.
Last question, and Don Waterman, you're first on this, and we still have closing statements, but I want to get to this question. The question is, there is a perception in the community of a rift among city council members after the council retreat in December. Residents are also complaining that the council isn't accomplishing much. How can the council build workable relationship among the members and be more effective in governing Columbia?
As far as we're 7 individuals, we have different opinions. We approach problems, issues from different perspectives, life experiences, etc. From my perspective, I get along with all the council members. There's nobody on the council that I would not sit down and have a cup of coffee with, lunch with, whatever. But I understand that there's different perspectives. We all have our different constituencies within the city that we represent. But then we also use our judgment as well when we're making a vote. As far as things not happening, yes, things happen slowly. That was one of my biggest frustrations when I first got on council, was realizing and learning just how slow some things can move. Part of that is because we do work hard at transparency. Sometimes that's why we have multiple meetings on things in an effort to be transparent. But yes, it moves slowly. Quite frankly, though, slow moving legislation frequently yields better legislation. I think those of us that have spent any time watching politics, they've seen, something will happen that gets a lot of national attention, and Washington, D.C. will rush some measure through what I call knee-jerk legislation that winds up having a lot of negative unintended consequences. So I would rather be a little more slow and deliberative.
Valerie Carroll, the question to you, perceptions and complaints. In light of those, how can the council build workable relationship among members and be more effective?
It's funny to me that this is being viewed as a rift among council members. I don't think that's the case. I think we all work together. I think we need to work to have processes in place that allow us to communicate with staff better, to serve our roles, and to effectively enact our duties. Some of those have fallen apart. Some of those, the processes to do what we're required to do, never existed. And so the opportunity for miscommunication between council and staff is abundant. We need to build those channels, and we need to be intentional about how we build those channels and how we communicate those channels to future council members. I think we work great together. I think we have a lot of different opinions, and I think we meet frequently and we work well together, checking in with each different council member. We have a number of check-ins. Don and I have a check-in once a month with DeCarlin. Vera and I have a check-in once a month with Barbara. We have off-cycle meetings as well, and we call each other constantly. Keeping open lines of communication help us work well.
Thank you. And the final question, or the final response to this question, to Christina Hartman. In light of perceptions and complaints, how would you say the council can build workable relationships among the members and be more effective?
Yeah. Well, I worked in technology for a long time, and when we are building new software or new systems, we have to often work together. and bring different personalities and different people together, and to understand how we work with each other is very key. I think, as you guys mentioned, both of you guys mentioned, that each ward, we each represent a different ward, right? And so we have to bring that ward's, the people of those wards' voice to each challenge. And so bringing that and seeing disagreement doesn't mean that we can't get along or we can't work through a problem. It just means that we're talking it through, we're highlighting the issues with it, we're working to solve that and move forward.
Thank you. 60-second closing comments now. Don Waterman, you get to go first on this one.
Again, I'd like to thank the Columbia Board of Realtors for hosting. Thank you, David, for moderating. Excellent job as always. It's been a pleasure. This is, I guess, for council, the kickoff to the campaign season. So there'll be a number of more forums hosted by various organizations, but glad for the opportunity. As I said, the reason I'm running is there's some unfinished business that we need to work on. And having been a part of maybe getting some of that started, I'd like to see it through. And I hope to bring my experience with council to be able to bring some of those to fruition. So I just thank you for your support.
Thank you. Christina Hartman, 60-second close for you, please.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to come up here and share my values and views with you guys. I am running because I do believe that we need to have reliable infrastructure. We need to have a housing that is available to different people in their lifestyles. And I think that having job opportunity really strengthens and grows our community. And so bringing those things together in good policy will make our community stronger. And that's what I would like to do for you. Vote Christina.
Thank you. And Valerie Carroll, your 60-second close.
I want to thank the voters for putting me here, for allowing me to represent you for the last almost 2 years. It's been a pleasure. I like doing this work. I'm looking forward to another term to serve you. And I'm thankful that I have that opportunity in front of me, likely as well. I'd like to finish what I started. I'd like to actually make progress on the goals in the housing study that we've just identified. I'd like to bring more services to our renters in Columbia. I'd like to help revitalize our housing stock and retain what we have existing. And I'd like to continue to fund mental health services for our city.
Valerie Carroll is a candidate for First Ward City Council position. Christina Hartman, Don Waterman, running against each other, represent Ward 5. We thank you all for being here, and thank you, crowd, for being here. Those of you here in person at the Board of Realtors room, and also those who have been watching online. Have a good evening, and best of luck to the candidates, and best of luck to the people voting to make sure they make the right choice. Thank you.